One of the world's largest forestry companies is cutting its lumber output in North America for the rest of the year. Interfor operates 5 sites in the Northeast, from Sault Ste. Marie to Elk Lake. It's unknown what this means for each location, but union officials say we need a trade deal with the U.S. before the slowdowns become the norm. CTV's Corey Nordstrom has more.
What happens when one of Canada's most important industries suddenly begins collapsing before our eyes? Entire towns built around lumber mills now face empty parking lots, silent machines, and families without paychecks. It's more than just a story about wood. It's about leadership, survival, and the future of a country. And the way Canada's leaders are handling this crisis has left many asking, who's really steering the ship? It all started with one announcement that sent shockwaves across the industry. Interfor, one of North America's largest lumber producers, declared it would slash production by nearly 145 million board feet between September and December. To put that in perspective, that's around 12% of its entire operation. For an industry that already runs on thin margins, this was nothing short of devastating. The company operates multiple mills across Ontario, from Sault Ste. Marie to Elk Lake. In these towns, the mill isn't just a workplace, it's the beating heart of the community. Within days of the announcement, workers were told to pack up. Shifts were cut back, junior employees were forced onto unemployment, and entire families were left scrambling to figure out how to pay rent, mortgages, and grocery bills. This wasn't a minor trim or temporary holiday break. This was a giant lumber company putting its foot on the brake, leaving hundreds of workers and small businesses in limbo. And as painful as this was for the people on the ground, it exposed a much bigger truth about where Canada is headed. But this wasn't just a company problem. It exposed a national crisis.
So why did Interfor decide to cut so deep, so suddenly? The short answer? Demand collapsed. With interest rates soaring and inflation squeezing families, new home construction slowed to a crawl. Fewer homes meant less need for lumber, and with warehouses filled and prices dropping, the company had no choice but to idle production. This is where the story takes a darker turn, because in the U.S., similar production cuts were framed as temporary setbacks. Leaders projected confidence. Workers, while hurt, believed the system would adapt. But in Canada, the response was silence. No clear plan, no roadmap, no reassurance from Ottawa, just uncertainty. And in that silence, frustration began to grow louder. Because the bigger question was, where was the leadership? For many Canadians, the name at the center of the storm is Prime Minister Mark Carney. Once hailed as the polished banker who could steer economies through crises, he's now accused of being absent when his own country needed him most. Critics say he's too busy attending global conferences, cutting international deals, and posturing on military contracts, while families at home wonder if they'll have a job tomorrow. And the contrast with the U.S. couldn't be sharper. South of the border, Donald Trump wasted no time projecting strength. Even as American mills scaled back, he promised new buyers, new markets, and a determination to keep America at the center of the global supply chain. Love him or hate him, his message was clear. America adapts, America survives. Canadians, meanwhile, saw no such message from Carney. Instead of reassurances, they saw a vacuum. Instead of confidence, they saw uncertainty. And instead of leadership, they saw indifference. And the cracks in Canada's leadership didn't stop there.
Even before the lumber cuts, Canada's forestry sector faced another front of anger, this time from Indigenous leaders. For years, communities have raised alarms over the widespread use of herbicide sprays. Chemicals, they say, are contaminating the land, harming wildlife, and threatening human health. Ottawa had promised consultations, safeguards, and accountability. But under Carney's watch, those promises faded into silence. So Indigenous groups organized their own demonstrations, demanding answers. With industries already on the ropes, Carney's absence only made things worse. Forestry companies suddenly found themselves caught between collapsing markets and furious protests.
It was a lose-lose situation, and leadership in Ottawa seemed nowhere to be found. And just as the dust was settling, another devastating blow landed. This time, the hit came in Quebec. Domtar, another major lumber player, announced it would suspend operations at its Maniwaki sawmill. On paper, the number, around 80 workers, might not sound huge compared to Interfor's cuts, but for a small town like Maniwaki, it was catastrophic. The mill was more than just a workplace. It was the lifeline of the entire community. When those saws went silent, it wasn't just jobs disappearing. It was paychecks that fueled local diners, gas stations, schools, and small businesses. Within weeks, families began packing up. Local stores lost customers, and the town itself faced the terrifying possibility of fading away. Local leaders begged Ottawa for help, but again, silence. 2 provinces, 2 shutdowns. Was this just bad luck, or the sign of something much bigger?
The truth is, this wasn't just about lumber. It was part of a pattern that had been building for years. One by one, Canada's core industries have been crumbling. The alcohol industry already faced its collapse, with declining sales and lost jobs. Forestry, once a backbone of Canada's economy, is now buckling. Energy, mining, and agriculture are holding on, but the warning signs are flashing red. Meanwhile, inflation remains painfully high. Grocery bills climb every month, gas prices eat into savings, and housing costs leave young families stretched thin. Debt levels are breaking records. Interest rates make borrowing nearly impossible. Canadians feel trapped in a cycle where every paycheck disappears faster than the last. And through it all, Ottawa insists things are under control. But on the ground, families know better. And it wasn't just economics. Politics was about to erupt. As mills shut down and towns hollowed out, frustration spread beyond rural communities. It wasn't just loggers in northern Ontario or Quebec shouting anymore. It was suburban families, city workers, and everyday Canadians realizing that their livelihoods were slipping away. And the anger had one clear target: Mark Carney. At first, his supporters dismissed the criticism as fear-mongering. But when industries collapsed back to back, that defense started to crumble. Carney's polished image as a global financial elite now looked like a liability. His speeches about climate initiatives and international partnerships fell flat when Canadians couldn't afford groceries. His dismissive attitude toward critics, sometimes lashing out in what opponents called angry tantrums, only fueled the perception of a leader out of touch and out of control. Conservatives seized the moment. They framed Carney as a disconnected globalist who cared more about impressing foreign leaders than protecting Canadian workers. And voters began to listen. And south of the border, the contrast only grew sharper.
Donald Trump, never one to miss an opportunity, turned Canada's pain into America's gain. At rallies, he pointed to shuttered Canadian mills as proof that America's leadership was superior. His message was simple. When America gets hit, it adapts. When Canada gets hit, it folds. And the optics couldn't be clearer. Even when U.S. mills cut back, Trump projected strength. He reminded workers that America doesn't wait for permission. It finds new deals, new markets, and keeps moving forward. Whether or not those promises always materialized didn't matter. The perception of confidence was enough to maintain trust. Carney, meanwhile, appeared paralyzed. Each shutdown made him look weaker. Each tariff made him look smaller. And every time Trump framed the contrast, Canada looked like the fragile neighbor that couldn't hold its own. Which raises the most painful question. If leadership is the deciding factor, does Canada even have one? The collapse of Canada's lumber industry isn't just about economics. It's about credibility, vision, and survival. Families who've relied on forestry for generations are being left behind. Communities are crumbling, and a government that should be fighting for them seems more focused on global approval than domestic survival. Meanwhile, America seizes the narrative, projecting strength and confidence, and Canadians are left wondering why their leaders can't do the same. So the question isn't just about lumber. It's about whether Canada's leaders are willing, or even able, to protect the industries that built this country. And if they don't act soon, the painful reality is this: there may not be many industries left to protect. That's the script. It runs around 22,000.